Later, the princess is in a big dungeon with chains on her, and her sword X is there too. X talks to her, and says many nights have passed since the Imperial army fought the Demon Lord's army. The princess is captured by the Demon Lord, and X tells the story of her victories, saying she's really strong. The story switches to the demon and a girl with big eyes who reach the prison. The girl, named Tortura, and a monster start asking the princess about Empire secrets. But X, the Holy Sword, says the princess is not just a princess, but also the leader of the 3rd Imperial Legion. Tortura says they're moving to the second plan, which involves hurting her a lot to get information. It turns out Tortura is the top investigator in the Demon Lord's army. She's not normal and was picked by the Great Demon King because she can get results in strange and special ways. The sword becomes angry when they plan to torture the princess. It tells them that agreements say no to torture, but Tortura says human laws and agreements don't matter in the Demon Kingdom. The princess calms the sword, saying not to worry, as she'll stay silent even if they torture her with flames. Tortura opens a strange contraption, revealing toasted bread. The Holy Sword laughs and questions what she hopes to achieve by tempting the princess with food, reminding her that she's a commander, not a child. Excited, the princess looks at the food, but when she tries to eat, the sword hits her head to wake her up. The princess explains she's not giving in, she just smells the delicious aroma and wants to eat like any human. Tortura does something to the princess, and she dreams of a golden carpet leading to a vast land with ripe wheat fields and the fragrance of white flowers like snow. The princess weakens in the presence of the bread, and the sword urges her to resist. The princess regains consciousness, apologizes, and asks to wipe the drool from her mouth. Tortura tells them to be silent, and cuts the bread. The princess weakens again at the beauty of the sound, and the enticing crunchiness makes it more appetizing. The sword calls out to her to wake up, and the princess does, more determined this time as the commander of the 3rd Imperial Legion. She won't surrender to such temptations. Tortura seems to pity her, but she says the torture isn't over. She then presents a dish of beef soup, causing the princess to weaken again. Tortura cuts a small piece of bread and dips it into the soup, further tempting the princess. She tries to stop her, but Tortura pays no attention and continues eating, angering the princess. Eventually, the princess fell to the ground, and Tortura told her she would spill all she knew. The princess, saddened by revealing secrets, asked for some toasted bread, even just one piece. Tortura, standing firm, said since she had divulged Imperial secrets, the torture was over, and there would be a celebration with a feast of toasted bread. The princess was overjoyed, eating voraciously and expressing immense happiness. The scene then shifts to Tortura in her room talking to the mysterious demon. She reveals their army is extremely weak, and using such a trivial secret for victory shows desperation. They decide to postpone the princess's release until she provides information their army can exploit. Tortura swears to continue torturing the princess daily, and the next day she goes to the princess, announcing it's time for another round of torture. X, the talking sword, converses with Tortura, discussing how she managed to defeat the princess yesterday due to her hunger. However, thanks to Tortura's bread torture the previous day, the princess is now filled with bread. Today is the day the princess and the commander of the 3rd Imperial Legion will stand firm no matter what torture you subject her to. As they observed, X and the princess witnessed the monster cooking. The princess, seemingly unaffected, asserted that she can't be tempted by food she hasn't tasted before, like takoyaki. She knows what it is because she used to watch through the palace windows during festivals, and citizens would buy them from food stalls to eat with family or friends, making her feel jealous then. In response, Tortura handed her a piece of takoyaki. The princess was enchanted by its taste, describing it as delicious, crispy on the outside with a piece of octopus in the middle, all dancing together in her mouth. She then proceeded to disclose everything, revealing the hiding place of the Empire's ultimate weapon. The scene transitions to Tortura speaking to the monster, expressing fear about using a weapon of such power. In her internal monologue, Tortura pondered about finding a different torture method if the Demon Lord was afraid. The next day at midnight, Tortura approached the princess, announcing it was time for her torture. The sword questioned the late-night torture, implying a lack of ethics in the Demon Lord's army. Tortura replied, saying she chose this time for a reason. The princess understood, acknowledging that depriving her of sleep was a form of torture. Tortura affirmed, stating that sleep deprivation might be challenging for an ordinary person, but the princess, being a commander who had fought in fierce battles for days without sleep, was accustomed to it. The princess added that she hadn't slept for 4 nights once while playing video games, so she was used to sleep deprivation. However, Tortura spoke, saying today's torture was not about depriving her of sleep. She then brought a box with her and opened the box, where a lot of air came out. The princess exclaimed, saying that this scent and warmth packs destructive power. That was when a very delicious meal appeared before her eyes, making the princess's stomach growl because she was very hungry and loved this delightful dish called ramen. The princess said that her stomach was preparing for sleep, but now, due to the visual stimulation and the scent of ramen, her stomach is like an excited child. The princess asked Tortura to give her this meal, but the Sword X warned her not to do so, advising her to avoid looking at it. It was not just ordinary ramen, and consuming it at this late hour would negatively impact her health and cause stomach pain. The princess acknowledged the danger but expressed her inability to resist its deliciousness. The chief investigator of the Demon Lord's army began consuming some of the broth as a temptation for the princess. She started eating the delicious noodles to entice the princess, who, in response, struck the ground. The sword ordered her to resist, but the princess requested him to end her now. Sword X advised her to show some patience, stating that ramen is a meal one enjoys quickly, implying that the torture wouldn't last long. The princess agreed, stating that as she becomes accustomed to the influence of ramen, she will control herself this time, and she will never give in. The chief investigator decided to further tease the princess. She then brought out a bowl filled with rice topped with spicy pepper paste and garlic, stuffing it with seaweed soaked in ramen broth. She started eating again, and the princess was shocked, unable to resist because eating is her weakness. She fell, thinking about noodles and spinach. Eventually, the princess couldn't resist and confessed again to another royal secret. Afterward, the investigator asked about how satisfied the Demon Lord is with the secret she brought him today. The answer was greeted with the usual dissatisfaction, and the investigator informed them that she would do her best tomorrow. Suddenly, 2 soldiers of the Demon Lord entered, requesting to take over tomorrow's torture session, to which the investigator agreed. Meanwhile, in the prison cell, we see the princess sleeping soundly, dreaming of toast and the other delicious food she had just experienced today. The next day, as Tortura enters the princess's cell to carry out her torture, it seems that today's torture will be different. Then 2 girls, Yuki and Inki, enter and welcome the princess in their own unique way. In those moments, the 2 attendants bring in a PlayStation console and set it up inside the prison. They start playing a beautiful game called Super Jump Fighter. The game begins, and the princess watches them play, astonished and appearing to want to join in. X laughs and dismisses it as nonsense, ridiculing the idea of torturing the princess with children's games, especially since she is the leader of the legendary 3rd Legion known for her bravery and leadership qualities. However, as we return to reality, they invite the princess to play with them. Initially, the princess refuses, stating that she will never surrender. Tortura then intervenes, telling the princess that the game can be played with 4 people. The princess becomes extremely happy. And we then see the 4 of them sitting together, playing the game in perfect harmony, all feeling great happiness. The game starts, everyone engages in significant battles, and finally, we see the princess launching another attack on her opponent and winning. They congratulate the princess on her victory in the game, praising her excellent performance. And they decide to play another round, making it another day of the princess's confessions. After finishing the game, the princess talks to Inki and Yuki, expressing her desire to play again. However, she quickly reconsiders, remembering that she is a princess and a leader of the Imperial 3rd Legion, and they are supposed to be enemies. Yuki reassures her, stating that they are no longer enemies but friends. They promise to return for another round of torture, and the princess is delighted. They console her gently, expressing their intention to add each other as friends on the internet. The princess agrees, and they proceed to add her. X is annoyed and questions the princess because she owns a phone and hasn't used it so far to call for help. Next, we see the Demon Lord, a massive and terrifying demon with a frightening face. His pig assistant informs him about the Empire that is vulnerable on Wednesdays. But the Demon Lord objects, mentioning that there will be crammed school on Wednesdays, making the information useless. The scene shifts to Tortura, taking a hot bath and contemplating a new way to torture the princess to reveal another secret. She recalls sending one of her assistants on a mission to the western town, and her return is imminent after completing her task. On the following day, Kral, a monster tamer, arrives at the prison to torture the princess as well. And when X hears that Kral is a monster tamer, he bursts into laughter, remembering the princess's encounters with fierce monsters, which she easily defeated with a single blow. Kral then advises the princess to face the upcoming monster bravely, and the nervous princess looks towards the cell door. When the monster appears, it turns out to be a tiny and adorable bear. The princess is initially tense but quickly falls in love with the cute bear. Seeing this, X tries to bring her back to reality, but she remains enamored with the bear. Following that, Kral takes the ball away from the bear, making it sad. The princess couldn't bear to see the bear in distress, and she became saddened too. She shouts at Kral to let the bear play as it was. Kral responds by saying that the choice is in her hands, and the princess becomes angrier because this is a truly despicable act from the Demon Lord's army. But she senses that Kral regrets her actions and asks if she is sad or remorseful. The bear, however, grabs onto Kral's leg, expressing profound sadness, which made Kral cry out of regret, throwing the ball on the ground and apologizing to the little bear for what she did. X talks to the princess, expressing disbelief at the situation but acknowledging that they won today. The princess then responds, saying she refuses to betray her friend, whether it was part of her job or not. She admires her friend's determination, declaring that she will uncover the secret nevertheless. Next, we see the princess playing with Khotun, wanting to hug him. But she did not provide any useful information today, so the torture will continue. On the next day, a new day of the princess's torture takes place in a different location. They instruct her to wear headphones and a mask to preserve the secrecy of the place. The scene transitions to the princess in a swimming pool, where a girl named Giant, a 4th-grade combat soldier and a torture officer, appears. The princess is astonished by Giant's massive size. X then speaks, questioning the reason for bringing them to a hot spring. Giant responds, stating that hot springs evoke a great feeling and are more suitable than torture. X understands that Giant plans to use kindness to deceive the princess but emphasizes that the princess is resistant to such tactics. Giant calms the princess down and hugs her. And the princess is delighted, reminiscing about her childhood and her real mother. X is surprised by their behavior. Later, the princess makes some confessions about the Empire, unable to resist the affection and warmth. The Demon Lord notifies the soldier that these confessions are still not enough, so the time for another round of torture arrives. This time Tortura tempts the princess with a delicious treat, a light snack of chocolate-filled biscuit chips. X dismisses it as a common snack, stating that the princess has enjoyed better snacks since childhood. He reveals that her faithful knight Jamochi has been preparing all the finest snacks for the princess to consume even outside of the castle. But at that moment, the princess drools for the delicious treat. X asks if she has had this snack before. And the princess reveals that they used to stop at a candy store on their way back from lessons, and her faithful knight Jamochi once gave her some of these chocolate-filled biscuit chips. Reflecting on the past, the princess asks not to tell her mother, as the old man used to do things that delighted her, expressing care and love. The princess reassures X not to worry, as she is not attached to those snacks. She explains that the particular snack was overpriced.